Hey, hi everyone. Today we are going to talk about security, and just a few details before I'll start with the session is uh, so obviously more people might be filing in, but we are getting into started in the interest of time. This is going to be a 45 minutes long session, and I had to leave out a lot of details yesterday, while I was just preparing these slides, just to ensure that this content is tailored and the content is not longer than a semester. Right. So just in case if anybody spots any inconsistencies, there might be probably some math behind it. So feel free to interrupt me in between. And though we are going to have Q&A session in the end, and but again, it depends on the time that we have in the clock. But feel free to just interrupt me. I'm just using one screen, so I might not be looking into the messages very actively. Okay. So now we are talking about security, and it is going to be a crypto talk, and it is going to be quite interactive, and possibly there are some cast of characters that are going to come here, and it's only traditional that because we are talking about cryptography, TLS, SSL, to introducing a new cast of characters that will come throughout this presentation. So the first cast of character is meet your narrator, right? So I'm Prathal, and Prathal has been working with the CP team and Confluent for about 2 months now. And so either Prathal is too smart or too stupid to claim the title of a cryptographer, but he has software in his title. So what it really means is my knowledge about security would be almost same as you guys would have. And now, it just feels very awkward and weird to, I'm just realizing it's quite awkward to introduce myself in the third person, but we'll get going. Okay. So now everything gets started with SSL. As we understand, so SSL was created during the dawn of web in 1995 by Netscape, and the full form is Secure Sockets Layer. 4 years later, the ownership has been changed to IETF, and obviously these new owners have to place their mark, and they have to rebrand it, put out a new name for this, and they have given the name of Transport Layer Security, which is TLS. And if you look carefully in the earlier versions of TLS, they are pretty much the same thing, right? Like the older versions of SSL is pretty much similar to the earlier versions of TLS. What exactly TLS does tell us is, the transport. So if you are, just having a brief of idea about OSI layer, so that gives you a certain sense that UDP, TCP kind of thing. So what we are going to do is we are going to do security in between these two layers, TCP and HTTP. So what we are going to do is we'll use a crowbar, we'll crank it up, and we'll shim in SSL or TLS. Right now, initially, what you have seen is that Netscape was really created, to keep in mind that it is going to run with HTTP, but like there's nothing stopping you to probably just run your databases, run your emails on top of these SSL or TLS layer. Now, security protocol, when we talk about these or SSL or TLS, what essentially it tells you, it does not tell you what math you are going to use, right? But what exactly it tells you, what are the different steps that you can follow in these protocols, and what are the different things that you're going to achieve. And since we are talking about security, so there has to be lots and lots of crypto, right? Now, obviously, it makes a lot of sense to understand the rules of crypto. Now, crypto is a very strange discipline. It pretty much came into existence, I would say, in the start of Second World War. It has been there for about 70, 80 years or even more. And so essentially how everything happens when you talk or go into the world of crypto is you have a room full of, smart people. You present something, you create some, different algorithms and whatnot, and you actually ask for that basically you just want different people. There are different researcher scholars on the security, people have been doing PhD, and they will just go like, okay, that looks good, right? And essentially how it happens is like another funnier correlation that I can say is uh, what you can do is like you need to take really hard problems, right? And you also understand that other people, we don't know how to solve it. Other people are not going to figure out, at least that is the realization we have. Other people, they are not going to figure out how to solve this. And then we build on top of that, right? And the only thing that can ensure that you will have a very secured or a reliable, protocol for your systems, for your companies, for your organizations is time and peer review, right? So essentially what it means is a lot of researcher scholars, PhD scholars, people all across the world, they have been looking onto these standards for over and over time, right? Every single day, every single month or year, they are trying to look into these different protocols and standards, and they're publishing if there are any vulnerabilities, and it has to bake in time. So essentially, these are the two key points that I want to highlight here. It is only time and peer review that can only make your SSL protocols or maybe your security standards even better. Okay. So now, the first cast of character for today is meet Alice. So Alice, you can think of as just a normal customer that we have. She likes to hang online, do a lot of shopping, chatting, banking, socializing with different people. And Alice is definitely not a cryptographer, as I mentioned. You can think of her as a normal customer, right? Also, the other thing is, now Alice is as naive that she wouldn't even understand that at some point of time using Internet Explorer was a mortal sin, right? So you can think of her as naive as possible, and she's not going to go out of her depth at all, not to do any security. Now meet Bob.com. So Bob is typically, you can think of Bob as an e-commerce website or any other portal who is either selling widgets, sending you, like, you can purchase books, or probably he's renting out some movies by hour, or maybe giving out computers or resources, right? On a certain dollar value by the hour, by the day. Now, Bob is a little technical. He's also not a cryptographer. So he has employed an engineer, right? And that engineer is a bit technical, and he's going to, tell us a few of the security norms to Bob. Now, Bob is okay to hear this engineer to apply certain security standards, and he's okay to take a few hops, but not far too many, right? So now in the world of Alice and Bob that we understood right away, now Alice is going to shop at bob.com. Alice is going to submit an order to Bob, right? Now, this order could probably contain some of the sensitive information. Think of it as, let's say, credit card details, right? In response, the order fulfillment will happen. And you can also think that what is happening in step two, maybe there are some confidential data, let's say a license key or some digital content has been shared back to Alice, something which is worth protecting, right? In the world of Alice and Bob, this is a perfectly reasonable thing to do, right? And this is absolutely fine. You don't need to do any added layer of security. However, there are even bad things in the world. So meet Eve, another cast of character for today. Eve is a passive eavesdropper, right? What essentially she can do is she can't alter your packet. She can't do anything. She cannot replay your traffic, right? Or your data packets, but she can read network. So this is more like a, somebody is sniffing off on the internet files and, listening to your different data transactions that is happening. So now Alice and Bob shop in front of Eve, right? So now this world contains three different characters. Now Alice again starts the order submission process, maybe giving out her credit card details and whatnot. In response, again, the fulfillment has happened, but Eve can actually listen to all of these events. She cannot play or alter anything, but she's reading these different transactions over the wire, and she can get hold of all the confidential data, maybe the credit card details, the license key that is getting back in the response. So again, it makes very obvious that whenever you are trying to do online business, you need to maintain confidentiality, and this is absolutely important. So now what we can do is, yeah, the answer is quite simple, just encrypt it. So now we'll go into the world of encryption. And what I'll do is, I might be going too fast or too slow, right? Just to cover a lot of content, but I'll take a pause after some time just in case if anybody has any questions. Feel free to pop in. I just have one screen, so just interrupt me in between if you don't understand anything. There might be some math behind it if some inconsistency is there. So just feel free to ask me. Okay, so we'll talk about encryption. As you can see, right, how this encryption can happen. There is a plain text referred as P. Then you will apply some math. This math is nothing but some public algorithms, AES, DS, RC4, Blowfish, right? Everything is available on the internet. And these algorithms are pretty much public. Then you take a session key, or let's just call a key, and it will convert it into a ciphertext. Now, when the ciphertext is passed with the help of this math plus key, you will get the plain text back. Also, just carefully watch what I've done is I have shown this plain text as red, right? And this is where this is the scariest thing, right? We don't want this information to get leaked, right? This is the confidential or the sensitive information. So that's why it is the scariest or the scary stuff. So that's why I've put it into the red color. Ciphertext is depicted as green. And why? Because like it is already encrypted, so maybe you can play around, you can do a little things, right? Nothing that would stop you do that. Now, once we understand that, now Alice and Bob is going to shop again in front of Eve, right? And now we have understood this mechanism, right? How we can encrypt it. So again, Alice shops again at bob.com. She gives her key, right? The key that Alice has, and we are going to use a single key. We'll see later how we can, move it to even a better technique. So Bob says, okay, if the Bob receives the key and, the order submission has been done. So basically the same key is getting used to do encryption and decryption. So order is submitted now. Both these guys have the key, Alice and Bob. Order is also fulfilled. But what will happen? Again. So as we understand that Eve is just an Eve's passive, like she's just an eavesdropper, right? She can't alter packet, she can't do anything, but she can still listen to the wire. So now she's again listening to this key. The moment she gets hold of this key, she can encrypt and decrypt on her own, right? And she can again read these confidential data. Also, when I say like Alice is sharing her key to Bob, so one other way could have been that maybe Alice could have driven all the way to the data center of Bob and shared this key, or maybe over the telephone she might have told, blah blah blah, all these different things. But definitely that's not the experience we were going for, so that's why you have to transfer it over the wire. And again, like this is not solving the problem. So essentially the problem has just been shifted from data to the key. Initially it was just data there, and now we have just added another layer of security. uh, Eve again is going to just to sniff through this wire, uh, hear these different things, listen to these events, and get hold of this key. So now what we are going to do, in order to maintain confidentiality, it means some sensitive information, even if somebody is not going to do anything about it, you cannot reveal it, right? So the best way to secure it is to perform a key exchange. And now we'll see what other kind of key exchanges. So now we head into the world of public key cryptography. Sometimes it's also called as asymmetric cryptography. The previous one was symmetric. And so here what we have a single key material. Now we broke it. Now we have simple, like we have broken it up into two parts. One is public key, the other is private. There is absolutely everything public about this public key. Like you can publish it in your blog, you can put it into your email signature, and there are actually benefits to it, right? So whenever you are sharing these public keys, right, you are actually telling all the customers or maybe the other people who want to interact with you, your browser, your system, your company or organization, that okay, this is my public key. You can encrypt using this public key to me, right? So now this is where math becomes a little complex. We'll see. So we'll take the plaintext RSA. It is an algorithm for asymmetric key, obviously created by three, different scientists. People would know Revish, Shimon, and maybe Edelman. I don't remember the A part. People can look it up. We have read this during our computer courses. So you'll do the plaintext plus RSA plus public key. You will get the ciphertext. Now ciphertext plus RSA plus the private key will give you the plaintext. Now this is where the magic happens. When you are going to use C, the ciphertext plus RSA plus the public key, all you get is garbage. It means even if you are the one who has encrypted a plain text into a ciphertext, but if you're not in the possession of a private key, you cannot decrypt it. So ultimately you'll get garbage, right? So this is why this works. Let's see. Now again, Alice and Bob are going to shop again almost safely, and let's see how. So Alice is going to ask for a public key from bob.com. Now Bob will send back this public key to Alice. Now Alice will use this public key to encrypt this session key, right, to Bob. Now Bob has the private key, so he will obviously decrypt it. He will get the session key and all good, and he will send the okay response. In step 4, order is being submitted using the session key, and the order has been fulfilled using the same session key. Now what Eve can do? Eve is able to, just sniff off these different signals, step 1 and step 2, right? All good. But all she can sniff off is the public key. She does not have the private key. So it means in step 3, step 4, and step 5, she cannot decrypt anything. Like everything will turn out to be garbage, right? So now this is how we are shopping safely. So like starting with step 3, if she would have the private key, which she doesn't, so she's not able to, get the access to this session key, and she cannot read anything. So now we have added one layer of security, and this is good. Now, key exchange via public key cryptography protects you from passive eavesdroppers like Eve, but so there are even bad things in the world, right? So meet Mallory. Uh, the thing is not stopping there. So Mallory is a malicious attacker, right? And she can do a lot of other things which Eve cannot do. So she can intercept, she can alter your packet, she can replay your network traffic, she can also add delays, right, during your network transmission. And Mallory also has a key of her own, right? She has her own key. Now we'll see how Mallory can, encrypt it or decrypt it during this entire transaction. So now Alice and Bob shop again in front of Mallory. Alice asks for the public key because Mallory can intercept these transactions or these different communication that is happening between Alice and Bob.com. So she's going to intercept it, right? Now she's going to replay the event back to Bob.com, right, for the public key. Now Bob will respond back with the public key. Bob.com, obviously the browser or the company, right? They will respond back. Now Mallory has intercepted this. Now Mallory is going to put her key back to Alice. Alice, as we understood, right, like she's quite naive, so she wouldn't know that, which key is this. And now she's going to encrypt it to Mallory. So yeah, she's going to encrypt with the key that Mallory has substituted. And now she has got the session key, right? Which Eve was not able to do. So yeah, now Mallory's back in business again, right? You are going to intercept everything. And no matter what, uh, she's encrypting the session key back to Bob and whatnot, and all these things, as we have seen, right? Whatever problem that was initially there, even with the public key, we are going to have the same problem, right? So key exchange via public key cryptography, or sometimes called as asymmetric cryptography, it doesn't protect you from malicious attackers. So basically what Mallory is doing, she's acting as man in the middle, right? She's coming in between and she's intercepting your packages. She's replaying your uh, packets. So she's that adversary that can substitute her key and still get access to the confidential data over the internet. Now meet Carl. So before I do this, I'll just quickly take a pause for 30 seconds if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, we'll have Q&A in the end. If anybody has any questions till now, because now certificate authority, we are going to talk about CA and other stuff. So, okay, I'll take it as a no. So now I'll move to the further thing. So now meet Carl, another cast of character for today, right? What Carl is a CA. He is a certificate authority, right? And what all he does is he simply certifies or vouches that, these are the name subjects which is associated with these keys, right? This is what the task of certificate authority Carl is. So what Carl does is all day, every day, he's just going to, issue a lot of certificates to different people. And anything on this certificate that you see, anything and everything that you see on this certificate can be forged, it can be tampered, right? It can be substituted. The certificate content, the key itself, right? Anything that is not going to be substituted or that cannot be forged is, the signature of Carl. You cannot do that. Now, Alice and Bob shops again. Let's see how. Now that we have understood what CA is, what CA authority does. Alice is going to shop again, asking for the certificate to Bob, but Mallory is going to intercept it. Now Mallory is going to replay this event back to Bob. Bob gives back the certificate, right? So initially Alice was asking for the key, the public key, but now she's asking for the certificate. Bob gives back the certificate. Now the question is, right, the important question, what Mallory is going to do about it? Previously, she has the key, right? So she was able to substitute her key, but now she got a certificate. Let's see what all different options Mallory has now. So this is the certificate that Carl has already created, right? What Mallory can do here, she can substitute her key, right? But in the event of this, what can happen? The moment she does this, the digital signature of Carl stops matching, right? So not a good way to do things. Second is Mallory can create her own certificate, right? She substitutes her own key and she can, sign this particular certificate on her own. But nobody is going to believe Mallory because she's not a trusted source. She's not a trusted CA. So when or if whenever she is trying to do this to Alice, maybe, they wouldn't trust this particular person. They will not trust this CA. So key exchange via public key cryptography with certified identity protects you from malicious attackers and from passive eavesdroppers. So now we have understood just the public key cryptography will not help you out. So you need to have certain CA and you need to have certain certificates. Within those certificates, you will have the public key, right? And that is how you're going to be protected from both the malware, malicious attackers, the man in the middle attack, and the passive eavesdroppers. However, if you can't trust the cert or you don't even bother, checking that, you actually lose confidentiality. And that's where, the major problems happen. Let's see how, right? How there are different attackers who are able to access to different, amount of sources over time here and there into different organizations, why that happens. So look at this picture, right? What it means is it does not say that, or at least by looking at the picture, I won't say that, this is not secure. I would rather say this is insecure. You will get this false sense of happiness that you have applied a lot of math, you have done a lot of things into your SSL or in your TLS. But if you don't bother to check with the CA that whether this certificate that I'm using or that I'm getting, whether this is issued by you or not, if you're not verifying that certificate, you're only having a false sense of hope, doing a lot of math. Essentially, what you're doing is you're adding more layers of security, you're introducing latency in your systems, you're generating a lot of heat without achieving anything, right? So now Alice and Bob shops again. This time safely, we'll see how. Alice is going to ask for the certificate to Bob. Bob is going to give the certificate back to Alice. And this is where again the magic happens, the real magic happens, right? So Alice will validate from Carl whether this certificate is being signed by you or whether this has been issued by you. We'll see in the later slides that how she's going to verify it. But right now, this is in step two. Everything happens and Mallory goes out of business. She's not able to, figure out anything else. So you need to verify this, right? That if the certificate that I'm using, be it a, let's say, VeriSign, DocuSign, or maybe, other kind of trusted sources, you need to verify from them whether this certificate is coming from you or not. Once you do that, you are safe from malware. And then, yeah, the order submission happens, order fulfillment happens, and you are totally safe. Okay. Yeah. Now, yesterday when I was creating the slide or maybe adding or editing some of these items here, uh, I just maybe in the end, I'll show you, the code repo of Confluent. I was looking into these, different things. So wget has a certain flag, no check certificate. And I got 19 different code bases within Confluent who are using these kind of things, right? So they are not bothering, verifying these certificates against the CA. So it means you're only adding or putting yourself into more vulnerability, right? Curl is a little, I would say, honest, or maybe as funnier as it gets. Curl is a little honest in the way. It will not tell you what exactly you are doing, but it will definitely tell you what you're accomplishing, right? So, so it is quite honest in the way saying that, you are insecure. And I, again, searched this into the code base of Confluent and I saw not much, but I saw a lot of code bases actually doing curl command without verifying their certificates. So ideally, that should not be done. Okay, now more interesting things. So Alice shops at Bob again. Now, there are few things that we need to understand, right? So now this is the basic transactions, whatever we have seen before. So Alice, Bob, there are, adversaries like Eve, Mallory. Most of the companies talk about Confluent, talk about Amazon, Google, everyone, right? So they are actually floating on the sea of load balancers, right? Whatever you see, this is a Citrix hardware load balancer, and everything comes free at cost, obviously after spending thousands of dollars to it. Yeah. So, what it does is it can help you in SSL termination. It means you might be initiating a certain request towards Confluent APIs, towards Confluent packages, or to these other e-commerce services, right? And you have a load balancer which is also acting as an SSL interception kind of thing, right? SSL termination happens, but we'll see. Now this is where the things become more interesting. So we have understood everything. Now we have a sea of load balancers, right? Now load balancer is going to intercept this company gives back the certificate because now we have binded these certificates, right, to the load balancer, not to the individual hosts. Because you might be moving hosts around here and there. So you might be having some load balancers or some webs, virtual IPs in front of them, which is going to replay traffic back to the customers. So now you get the certificate of identity. Alice will again, check back with the CA, Carl, that whether you have issued this certificate or not. And yeah, after that verification, now she is going to encrypt it using the public key, gives back the session key. Order submission has been done. Everything has been done at the load balancer layer. Now the question is, this is where things become interesting. And this is where if you read a lot of, security papers published by PhD scholars or these standards, you will have four different ways of doing security at your organization. And we'll quickly see how this is going to happen. So this is option one, right? Option one is called as clear text. So everything, whatever we have done, we have ensured the security or the SSL at the load balancer layer or maybe at the top layer, right? Not within the like the private space, right? Or the private subnet of this organization. All we can see is, inside we can just directly float the clear data. Maybe just the order submission is happening. We are not doing SSL inside the boundary of the company. We are just doing it outside the internet, the public internet and the intercepting point of this particular company. Now, there are certain pros and cons. It is perfectly reasonable and might be a good way to do things because you're not going to add further latencies inside, right? Which is good. However, you are, adding yourself more, or maybe you're just making yourself more vulnerable to Eve and Mallory, but within the boundaries of your system, right? So there are certain firewalls and whatnot, but this is within the boundary, not in the boundary of the internet, right? So this might be a reasonable thing to do, and most of the companies do that. So they have this SSL termination thing at the load balancer or the API gateway level. Inside within the private subnet, they don't want to encrypt a lot of things because it will only add to a lot of latency. So this is option one. Sorry. Option two, most of SSL. So essentially what we are going to do, we'll see, we are going to buy most of SSL. So again, we are going to ask for the certificate. And this is where, we get the certificate and you see different kind of call. Right. Obviously, we are not going to spend, $100, maybe $200 to get a certificate from that call. We are not going to, give that amount of money maybe to DocuSign or, VeriSign, all these trusted root CAs, right? Because they charge you a lot of money. So maybe this time again, the math or maybe the logic remains same, but this time we are going to go with a different set of call, right? So which can grant you certificates in some cheaper rate. And why this is most of SSL, it is not the full SSL because we are not going to go and verify again. So we are just getting a certificate, but we are not verifying with this other Carl, right? Whether this certificate that we are getting, whether it is signed by you or not. And this is where, like again, the public cryptography will happen. You will get the session key and the order submission will happen. So this is how, we are encrypting. This is option two. Again, perfectly reasonable with some, cons that we have seen. And again, like because we are not verifying with this other Carl, right? So you are suscepting yourself or opening yourself to Mallory adversaries, but again within the private subnet. Third thing, right? Open SSL option three, which is complete SSL. And this is where, like, again, the same thing happened. This time we are going to verify with this call, right? And that is where I mentioned, right? That is where the magic happens. You are verifying your certificate, whether it is a authorized signed certificate by this particular authority or not. So we get the order submission and we are all good. Okay, one thing I missed, right? One thing I missed, maybe a funnier thing. If you remember option one, right? What we were doing is we were doing only clear text. All the SSL on the load balancer or maybe on the API gateway and nothing inside. Inside, we are just doing simple HTTP calls, right? No SSL, no TLS. So maybe like 3 years back, I was giving a similar sort of this presentation to a bunch of people, 300, 400 people. I got to understand one thing that is called as a mullet whip, right? So what a mullet whip properly would look like, there is a mullet haircut as well, right? Mullet whip means like business in the front and party in the back, right? So that's why I remember option one. So like all the business is happening in the front and you're partying in the back. So you're not doing a lot of SSL in the back. So you have three options, option one, option two, option three. All three are perfectly reasonable, given the choices, given the pros and cons, the trade-offs that your company choose to do, right? Okay, honest security is better than dishonest security. And this also, forms the crux of entire security mechanisms. If you're honest about it, as I mentioned, you have three options. If you're honest about it, all good. But if you're trying to have this false sense of security, doing a lot of math, putting your SSL, TLS webs and whatnot, but you are skipping some of the hops, like you're not verifying your certificate against the CA, that will only lead you to more issues because that is dishonest. You are doing a lot of things. You're introducing latencies, you're adding multiple layers, generating friction, adding more heat, but you're not adding to the value of security. So there's another option, four, right? And this has been quite prevalent in most of the companies. I don't know right away that, how Confluent uses it across different services. But I'm pretty sure they might be using this option 4 as well, right? This becomes important. So what we have understood is, what we are doing is we are now, maybe you can listen carefully here. Initially, what we are doing in option 1, 2, and 3, we are having SSL VIPs, virtual IPs, SSL, right? Can we do it at the host level, right? Because essentially this is just, maybe let it, just do the load balancing part and keep the SSL or the encryption at the host level, even if you're moving around hosts. So you can have those kind of TCP VIPs, right? So initially we are having like SSL VIPs here, right? On these load balancers, Citrixes. Now we are having it on the host level, right? And how this can happen? So we took the certificate provided by DocuSign or maybe VeriSign, right? And these trusted uh, parties, CA, and we put it back to the host, right? Every single host. We binded it to the host and we have not binded it to the virtual IP or the VIP. So now again, this will act as a pass-through layer. The load balancing will do its own thing. It will ask for the certificate. Bob will give back the certificate to Alice. She will again check with Carl and she will encrypt the session key. Order submission happens and the order fulfillment will also happen here. Okay. Now, one thing that I've been doing in the previous slides, you might see, right? I've been doing a lot of hand waving. Basically, I was just saying that, Alice will check with Carl. I never gave you the details how, you will check with Carl. One particular way would be maybe like Alice is just checking with Carl that, is this digital certificate all fine, all okay? And you might be giving a yeah, like maybe yes, right? So essentially, we are not doing anything else. We have again shifted the problem from the data or the key or the certificate again back to the trusted CA, right? Because here Mallory can again act as an interceptor. She can impersonate Carl, right? So essentially how this is being done is, so Alice also has the public key of this certificate authority. So it means you have the public key of bob.com and you also have the public key of the certificate authority. So that's how, like, you will again do the same math and do the same thing. So that's how you are going to verify your certificate. And this is also the reason, as I was mentioning before, right? Because this adds to the latency. So sometimes people just, they don't go through this hop because there are certain latencies. But then you have to be very cautious. You have to be honest about it. You don't have to be dishonest. Okay, do I trust Carl? So again, there are a lot of digital providers in the world, right? Across the globe, within America, in Europe, in India, and you can see a lot of like DigiCert, Rapid SSL, VeriSign, right? Komodo is something like which is again one of the biggest probably CA certs outside USA, and often we have seen in the past that all of these have been compromised in some way or the other, right? Though they have been providing the greatest security, but every now and then there is some leak. So yeah, shall we go now? Maybe not. We have a few more things, right? Okay, certificate of identity, as we understand, like Mallory can, she can have her own certificate, she can do everything, right? But like, who is going to, attest to Mallory? Nobody is going to do that. Also, the other thing, what I'm trying to say is Mallory can go back to these different to these, certificate authorities, and she can also get a certificate, right? Like she can just pay them up and she can also get a certificate, right? And she can try to do those things, but obviously that will not help her out. So basically, what we are saying is, do we trust Carl? Now, this is where the important thing happens. Are we saying we trust Carl, right? And this is exactly what SSL does. All we do is we are trusting these CA parties, right? Like we trust Carl or we trust CA. Ideally, what it should have been, right? And this is the basic flaw in SSL at some point of time, right? Like rather, we should trust Carl to vouch for these domains. Basically, we need that person to vouch for something, right? The activity that that person is doing, we need to trust that activity, not that person itself, right? That maybe I trust this person, but this person, let's say Carl has a bad day, right? And he's going to just, verify, doing some aggregation, put everything. Maybe on that particular day, half of the internet is down, right? So a compromised trusted root CA endangers the entire net. So ideally, and this is where, things like SSL need to take care of it. And in the later versions of TLS, some of these things have been resolved as well. Now we have to go deeper, right? Maybe 10 minutes of more talk is left. And yeah, then we are done. We'll be open for questions. Now we have to go deeper, right? So right now we understood Eve, we have understood Mallory, we have understood Carl, and we have understood different ways of, doing SSL. with different choices, pros and cons, and we have also talked about the Mullet VIP, right? Now we can have a 256-bit plain text, but right now here we are talking about SHA-1 or maybe 128-bit plain text, right? So whenever you are doing a put or a get or anything, right? So you have a long string. Now, essentially what happens, this is going deeper, that what exactly is happening. We are taking a 128-bit plain text, taking the key, taking the math AES, and we are converting it into a cipher. Right. Now imagine you have a very long plain text, right? You're sending out some information. There are some headers, there are some, get, put, post, all these operations. And it's a really long plain text that is not going to get inside this 128-bit. So essentially what happens is you're going to break them up into different 128-bit plain text, or maybe you have the 256 encryption, so you can break it into 256-bit plain text. This is called as electronic code book, right? Or the ECB. So we are going to do the same math. We'll apply AES the math, the key, and we'll get these different ciphertext. And we are going to pass it up, right? Uh, Again, there are different things that how Mallory can, substitute here and again catch hold of it. And there is an interesting looking formula for this, right? You can read about it. Okay, essentially what happens is, so, there is a task like this penguin. I found this off the internet, right? Essentially, when you are encrypting this, it is getting encrypted, but essentially what it is also meaning that it is getting encrypted, but you're also able to make out that, this is the penguin, this is the tux, no matter what, whatever kind of encryption you are doing it. So chosen plain text attack, what exactly happens is, now, this Mallory, she can also go back to Alice. Maybe on a piece of paper, she would say that, hey, just encrypt me. I'm giving you some guess. So this might looks funnier, but this is exactly how attackers do. They do the guessing game, right? Now, what she can do is she can take a plain text. She would go back to Alice. Alice is naive. She wouldn't know. She would use the same algorithm, same math, right? AES ciphertext. She will get back to Mallory. Now, Mallory is doing a lot of guessing work, right? And you have seen in the previous thing. So by any chance, Mallory is never able to catch hold of this key, and she has never broken this protocol. But all she has done is she has done some guesswork. She's able to, look into the loopholes of the security standard itself, and she's able to break those protocols. She never recovered the key. She would never recover, probably, she will not break that crypto algorithm itself. So this is how, like, fast forwarding. Yesterday I have a lot of slides, but I've cut it, all along because there has to be a longer session for that. But you got the idea, right? So chosen plain text attack, and this is where the issue happens, right? This is more deterministic in nature. It means with the same plain text, with the same key, with the same algorithm, you're always going to get the same ciphertext. So imagine your system where there are some, uh, there are some messages which have been floating around quite frequently. Let's say password accepted, transaction successful. Imagine there is a hacker, like Mallory, some adversary, who is looking and setting that, okay, these packets are looking very similar to it. So what they will do is they can try to, choose a certain plain text, try to intercept in between and do this guessing game. And the moment she guess, right, and we'll see how she guesses. And there are a lot of slides which have, removed it, like where there is like further chaining of it, but which is also used in blockchain. If there is enough interest, I can talk about blockchain in some other session later on. Yeah, but you got the idea, right? So we need a little more amount of randomness. So for randomness, you need to have CBC. I have cut down all the slides here, uh, because the math becomes just too complex, right? So cipher blockchaining, what it means is we don't have the key, we are using the key holder as an encryption oracle. So basically how Mallory is going to do, this hacking stuff. She's actually trying to make Alice as an oracle, right? Like she's giving the guessing game that, okay, take this plain text, she is intercepting, giving a certain plain text, and she's encrypting to her. And whenever that thing matches, she's able to figure out, the entire thing, right? Okay, now we are guessing in a 128-bit system. So a little bit of math that we can do here is later on in the other slides. So here the situation is Mallory has injected malicious JavaScript into your browser. She can make arbitrary request, as I told you. She controls the request. She also has the request body. She can do that, right? Browser has to do multiple things, right? One important thing that we understand is the request headers. So the browser, whenever you are talking to that, they will automatically insert the session cookie. And this is the most important stuff. This is the confidential stuff. So let's say you're shopping on a website, let's say Amazon, you're trying to buy some product. You are putting your username, you're putting your password, right? You're doing multi-factor authentication, MFA, and you are getting a session cookie back from the browser. Now, next time, let's say if Mallory has done this guessing game, right, through the CBC, and she got that session cookie. No matter what, next time, whoever is in the possession of the session key can actually get back and alter things. So idea is, you need to figure out that session cookie. So blockwise chosen boundary attack, how it happens. This is interesting, right? So I have kept this in slide. So assume the cookie is 16 characters, which is two, you just multiply it, right? So one full block we have, right? 128 bit, basically 16 into 8. Now imagine you have to guess the entire cookie, right? You have a 16 character session ID, and you have to do the entire guessing. So it will be like 2 raised to the power 128. Like every bit will have two options, 0 1 0 1 0 1 up till how 128 positions. So this is going to take ages, right, for Mallory to break, or some hackers. And this is a long, long number. I'm not going to read it up to you guys, right? You can see this is how 2 raised to the power 128 looks. But this is exactly what these hackers do. They guess the entire cookie one byte at a time. They don't guess the entire cookie, right? So you can see 1 byte guessing. So this is 16 into 2 raised to the power 8. So this is just 4096 guesses. And Mallory is back in business, right? She's going to get your session cookie and you are done with it, right? And that's 2 raised to the power 116 times faster. And obviously, like, this is the number that almost every owners of services would only dream. These are the latency numbers that people would might dream. I can get that kind of thing, right? So imagine the hackers are going to do this CBC, and they are going to find these loopholes and they're going to break things. So there is a flaw in SSL itself, right? The combination of the CBC chosen plaintext that I've shown before and the blockwise CBC that we have, attack is seriously evil, right? And but because we believe in the browsers that okay, browser has its own good security, so we just leave it to that. I mean, just 1 year, I'm making that's a joke there. So we don't do anything about it. So shall we stop using SSL? Now we are to the end of the session. Shall we stop using SSL because whatever we have understood that there is a major flaw, right? If we are not going to follow all these steps, we are going to be broken no matter what. So the answer is no, right? No matter you might be the smartest person on the floor, you might have done a lot of these things, as I mentioned, right? Everything. So we should leave it to these experts. The only thing that can help you gain a reliable, secured network or reliable, secured cryptographic algorithms that you are using in your systems is time and peer review, right? So you just need to see that, a lot of people are looking at it. They're trying to find out vulnerabilities. They are putting patches, and it has to bake in for some time. So even if you see like the TLS versions, the TLS 1.0 or maybe 1.1, it was created a long time back in 2006. After almost like 20 years, maybe I don't know, like 2014, they released TLS 1.2, maybe the next version. Now I think TLS 1.3 is on the fly. So imagine, right? Like 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, half of the browsers are also not supporting some of the TLS versions. So yeah, this is just a long, long thing. And people have just to be cautious about it. They need to know how SSL and TLS needs to be done. Just by doing a lot of math will not save you or help you out in, making your systems better. Yeah. So just the summary to sum it up, if you don't follow the SSL protocol, you don't get the benefits. Obviously, you need to, especially like where people are skipping that hop for verifying the certificate. Even if you follow SSL exactly, you might be undermined by these different trusted parties, right? That we have seen in the past. There have been a lot of different issues. And yeah, even if you follow SSL exactly, you'll be undermined by SSL itself because we have seen the flaws. Right. And how, just the, parting note, how this entire thing happens is, as I mentioned, right? So there are a bunch of people. We believe that there are some hard problems to be solved. And we also assume that, other people are not going to figure out these things and we are going to build on top of it. Right. This is the real thing that happens with security. So every now and then you need to make it better. And also it does not happen that, on one day everything falls apart over the internet. Hackers are looking at it, even the researcher scholars are looking at it. They are, publishing a lot of PhD papers, scholars, they are doing too many things. I also initially kept a certain papers, to talk about it, but because I needed to keep it short. So I've removed that, but if there is enough interest, feel free to make me otherwise, and I'll be happy to share those, different details and content. Quick takeaways. So understand your security mechanisms. It should not be too complicated. It should not be too easy to break. And you should be honest about your security. Understand what exactly you're trying to accomplish rather than just doing a lot of math. Seeing that, okay, certain system is just doing SSL, maybe I can, bake in my APIs. I will make myself robust. That is something that will not happen, right? You need to understand those protocols, how it is implemented in your company. And you should just leave crypto up to the experts and then check upon them, periodically. Yep. Okay.